The sun was beginning to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the busy streets of Crestwood City. Officer Daniel Hayes adjusted his cap as he drove his patrol car through the familiar neighborhoods. Known for his meticulous nature and unwavering commitment to rules, Daniel prided himself on keeping order in the city. He believed that even the smallest infractions could spiral into bigger problems if left unchecked. On this particular evening, traffic seemed heavier than usual. Horns blared, pedestrians hurried across crosswalks, and street vendors called out to passers-by selling snacks and drinks. Daniel's radio crackled with updates from dispatch, but nothing urgent caught his attention. It was just another routine shift, or so he thought. As he turned onto Maple Street, a narrow road lined with old brick buildings and corner shops, something unusual caught his eye. A sleek black sedan was parked haphazardly near a fire hydrant, its hazard lights blinking. Lazily, Daniel frowned. Parking violations might seem minor, but they were part of what kept the city running smoothly. He pulled over behind the car and stepped out, his boots clicking against the pavement. His presence immediately drew curious glances from nearby pedestrians. As he approached the driver's side, he noticed a woman sitting inside, her head bowed slightly as she rifled through papers on the passenger seat. She wore a tailored blazer, her dark hair pulled back into a neat bun. "Good evening, ma'am," Daniel said firmly, tapping lightly on the window. The woman looked up, startled. For a moment, their eyes met through the glass, his sharp and authoritative, hers calm yet tinged with annoyance. She rolled down the window halfway, revealing an elegant face framed by professionalism. "Yes?" she asked, her tone clipped but controlled. "I'm Officer Hayes," he began, gesturing toward the car. "You're parked illegally next to a fire hydrant. Do you have any reason why I shouldn't issue a citation?" The woman sighed audibly, leaning back in her seat. "Look, officer, I've had a long day. I'll move it in a minute. I just needed to grab something important." Daniel's expression didn't soften. "Ma'am, parking laws exist for everyone's safety. Whether your day has been good or bad doesn't change that." She raised an eyebrow at him, clearly unimpressed. And here I thought public service meant helping people, not nitpicking about where they park for 2 minutes. Her comment struck a nerve. Daniel stiffened, feeling a mix of frustration and defensiveness rise within him. He reminded himself to stay composed. This wasn't personal. It was about enforcing the law. "Well, ma'am, perhaps you should consider following the rules like everyone else," he replied curtly, pulling out his ticket book. But then, something unexpected happened. The woman suddenly reached for her purse on the passenger seat. Her movements were quick, almost instinctive, which made Daniel's instincts kick in. Without thinking, he placed a hand on the holster of his gun. "Hold it right there!" He barked, his voice louder now. The woman froze, her hand still hovering over her bag. Confusion flashed across her face before turning into irritation. "What exactly are you doing?" she demanded, her voice sharper this time. Daniel hesitated, unsure whether he'd overreacted, but his training told him to remain cautious. "Please, keep your hands visible, ma'am," he instructed, his tone firm. Tension hung thick in the air. Pedestrians slowed down, some stopping altogether to watch the scene unfold. The woman complied reluctantly, placing her hands on the steering wheel. For a brief moment, Daniel felt a pang of doubt creep into his mind. Something about her demeanor didn't fit the profile of someone who would pose a threat. Still, protocol was clear. Rules were rules, and yet deep down he couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter might lead somewhere far more complicated than a simple parking violation. Little did he know, this seemingly ordinary stop was about to unravel in ways neither of them could have anticipated. The tension between Officer Daniel Hayes and the woman in the black sedan continued to simmer. Pedestrians lingered nearby, some whispering to one another while others pulled out their phones to record the scene. The faint glow of streetlights began to illuminate the area as dusk settled over Crestwood City. "Ma'am," Daniel said, his voice steady but firm, "I need you to step out of the vehicle." The woman's eyes widened, her calm demeanor cracking slightly. "Excuse me? For what reason?" she demanded, her tone rising with disbelief. Daniel pointed toward her purse, still sitting on the passenger seat. You made a sudden movement. Toward your bag. Until I can confirm there's nothing dangerous inside, I have to proceed with caution. She stared at him incredulously, shaking her head. Are you serious right now? My purse? You think I'm carrying something dangerous in my purse? Her words carried an edge of sarcasm, but Daniel didn't flinch. He had seen too many situations escalate because officers let their guard down prematurely. Rules were put in place, for a reason, and he intended to follow them, no matter how inconvenient they seemed. I'm not making assumptions, ma'am, he replied evenly, but protocol requires that I ensure the safety of everyone involved. The woman sighed deeply, clearly exasperated. After a moment, she unbuckled her seatbelt and opened the car door cautiously. As she stepped out onto the pavement, her posture radiated frustration mixed with thinly veiled indignation. She was tall and poised, her tailored blazer giving her an air of authority that contrasted sharply with Daniel's uniformed rigidity. Fine, she said, holding up her hands in mock surrender. What exactly do you want me to do? Daniel gestured for her to stand beside the car, away from the open door. Please stay here while I check your identification, he instructed, reaching for his radio to call it in. As he ran her license plate through the system, his gaze flickered back to her face. There was something about her expression, a quiet confidence that bordered on defiance that unsettled him. Most people in this situation would be apologetic or visibly nervous, but she seemed almost amused by the absurdity of it all. Moments later, the dispatcher's voice crackled over the radio. Officer Hayes, the vehicle is registered under Mayor Elena Thompson's name. Daniel froze mid-motion, his hand hovering near his notebook. His mind raced as he processed the information. Mayor Elena Thompson, the city's first black female mayor known for her progressive policies and strong leadership. He glanced at the woman again, taking in her polished appearance and commanding presence. It suddenly clicked. This wasn't just any citizen, it was her. For a fleeting second, doubt clouded his judgment. Had he misread the situation entirely? Was this really worth pursuing further? But then his training kicked back in. Even if she was the mayor, the initial parking violation still stood, and her earlier actions, reaching for her purse so abruptly, had raised legitimate concerns. Mayor Thompson, he said finally, his tone softer but still professional. I apologize if this has been inconvenient, but I need to clarify why you reached for your bag so quickly. Elena crossed her arms, her expression unreadable. Because I was trying to find my phone to call my assistant, she explained curtly. Not that I should have to justify myself to you. Her words stung more than Daniel expected. He knew she was right. She shouldn't have to explain herself. But protocol dictated otherwise. Still, guilt gnawed at him. Arresting someone like Mayor Thompson would undoubtedly cause a public uproar. Yet failing to act could undermine his credibility as an officer. Before he could respond, Elena spoke again, her voice sharp and cutting. Do you realize how this looks, Officer Hayes? A white police officer detaining a black woman without probable cause? Do you think anyone watching will see this as just doing your job? Her question hit him like a punch to the gut. Daniel glanced around, noticing the growing crowd of onlookers. Some nodded in agreement with Elena. Others filmed silently, their expressions unreadable. What started as a routine stop had spiraled into something far more complicated and potentially explosive. Daniel felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. Every decision he made next would carry consequences far beyond this street corner, and yet, despite the mounting pressure, he couldn't ignore the sinking feeling that he might already be in over his head. The air grew heavier as Mayor Elena Thompson's words hung in the space between her and Officer Daniel Hayes. Her accusation wasn't just directed at him. It was a challenge to the system he represented, one that had long been criticized for its biases and inconsistencies. For a moment, Daniel felt paralyzed, unsure how to respond without further escalating the situation. He cleared his throat, attempting to regain control of the interaction. Mayor Thompson, he began cautiously, I understand your concerns, but I'm simply following protocol. If you'd cooperate fully, we can resolve this quickly. Elena raised an eyebrow, her expression unyielding. Cooperate? Officer, I've done nothing wrong. You stopped me for parking near a fire hydrant, a mistake anyone could make. And now you're accusing me of what exactly? Carrying something dangerous in my purse? Her tone dripped with sarcasm, and Daniel winced inwardly. He knew she had a point. Most people wouldn't have reacted so strongly to such a minor infraction. But his training told him not to back down, no matter who was standing before him. Rules applied equally to everyone, or at least, that's what he had always believed. I'm not accusing you of anything, Daniel replied, though his voice lacked conviction. I'm ensuring the safety of both of us, that's all. Elena let out a humorless laugh. Ensuring safety? By treating me like a criminal in front of half the neighborhood? Tell me, Officer Hayes, would you have handled this the same way if I were someone else? Her question struck a nerve, forcing Daniel to confront uncomfortable truths about his own actions. Would he have been as quick to escalate the situation if she weren't black? If she didn't carry herself with such authority? He wanted to believe his decisions were impartial, driven solely by procedure, but doubt crept into his mind. Before he could answer, a voice called out from the growing crowd. Leave her alone, she's our mayor. Daniel turned sharply toward the source of the interruption, a young man holding up his phone to record the scene. Others in the crowd murmured their agreement, some stepping closer as if ready to intervene. The atmosphere shifted palpably, tension crackling like static electricity. Everyone, please stay back, Daniel ordered, raising his hand to signal them to keep their distance. His voice remained calm, but there was an undercurrent of urgency. He couldn't afford to lose control of the situation, not now. Elena noticed the unease in his demeanor and seized the opportunity. Officer, this isn't going to end well for anyone, she said pointedly. You're already on shaky ground here. Why don't we de-escalate before things get worse? Her suggestion sounded reasonable, even conciliatory, but Daniel hesitated. Backing down now would feel like admitting fault, and he couldn't allow himself to appear weak, especially not in front of the crowd. Instead, he doubled down. Mayor Thompson, I need to complete this process. Please hand over your license and registration. Elena sighed deeply, shaking her head as if disappointed but unsurprised. She retrieved her wallet from her purse and handed him her identification. As Daniel examined it, confirming once again that she was indeed the mayor, his discomfort only deepened. Meanwhile, the crowd continued to swell, drawing more attention to the unfolding drama. A few people shouted criticisms at Daniel while others recorded videos destined for social media. Someone even mentioned calling a news station. Daniel felt the weight of their collective judgment pressing down on him. Every second that passed made the situation more volatile. He glanced at Elena, whose composed exterior masked whatever emotions she might be feeling. Despite everything, she hadn't raised her voice or lost her temper. Yet. But Daniel knew better than to underestimate her. This woman was used to commanding respect, navigating high-stakes scenarios, and holding others accountable. She wasn't someone who would let this incident slide quietly into obscurity. As he stood there, torn between duty and discretion, Daniel realized he was facing a choice far greater than issuing a parking ticket. Whatever decision he made next would ripple outward, affecting not just his career but also the fragile trust between law enforcement and the community they served, and time was running out. The crowd around Officer Daniel Hayes and Mayor Elena Thompson grew louder, their voices blending into a cacophony of frustration and anger. Some shouted accusations at Daniel, while others chanted slogans about justice and equality. The scene had transformed from a routine traffic stop into something much larger, a public spectacle that neither Daniel nor Elena could have anticipated. Elena stood silently beside her car, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. Her calm exterior was deceptive. Beneath it churned a storm of emotions. She knew the power of moments like this, their ability to spark conversations, ignite movements, or destroy reputations. And she also knew that how she responded would shape not only her own legacy, but the perceptions of everyone watching. Daniel, on the other hand, felt increasingly cornered. His radio buzzed intermittently with updates from dispatch, but he barely registered them. His focus was split between managing the growing crowd, processing Elena's identity as the mayor, and grappling with his own internal conflict. Every decision he made carried immense weight, yet none seemed free of consequences. "Officer Hayes," Elena said finally, breaking the tense silence between them. Her voice was measured, but there was an undeniable edge to it. "This situation is spiraling out of control. You're making a mistake, one that could harm both of us." Daniel looked at her, his jaw tightening. He wanted to argue, to defend his actions, but her words rang true. The longer this went on, the harder it would be to salvage anything resembling order. "I'm just doing my job, Mayor Thompson," he replied, though his tone lacked conviction. "And I'm asking you to reconsider what doing your job means in this moment," Elena countered. "Do you really think arresting me or even detaining me further is going to solve anything? Or will it only make things worse?" Her question hit its mark, forcing Daniel to confront the reality of the situation. Arresting the mayor for a minor infraction would not only damage his reputation, but also inflame tensions within the community. It would fuel narratives of bias and misconduct that many officers, including himself, worked tirelessly to dispel. But letting her go without resolving the issue felt like admitting defeat, and worse, it might undermine his authority in front of the crowd. Before Daniel could respond, a new voice joined the fray. "Mayor Thompson!" someone called out. A middle-aged woman pushed through the crowd, her face etched with concern. "Are you okay? Do we need to call someone?" Elena nodded graciously, offering the woman a small, reassuring smile. "Thank you, but I'm fine, just dealing with a misunderstanding." The word misunderstanding hung in the air, heavy with implication. Daniel flinched inwardly, realizing how easily this incident could be framed against him. Misunderstandings didn't typically involve handcuffs and hostile crowds. Meanwhile, the young man who had first spoken up earlier held his phone aloft, live streaming the entire encounter. "Folks, we're witnessing something important here," he announced to his viewers. "A black woman, our mayor, is being treated unfairly by law enforcement. This isn't right." His commentary drew murmurs of agreement from the crowd, some nodding vigorously while others clapped in solidarity. Daniel felt the pressure mounting, sweat trickling down the back of his neck despite the cool evening breeze. "Mayor Thompson," he said quietly, leaning closer so only she could hear. "If I let this go, can we agree to move past it, for the sake of avoiding unnecessary conflict?" Elena studied him for a long moment, her sharp gaze piercing through his facade. Finally, she spoke. "You mean for the sake of saving face, for both of us?" Daniel didn't deny it. "Yes," he admitted. "This doesn't have to escalate further. Let's resolve it here and now." Elena hesitated, weighing her options. On one hand, walking away would spare everyone involved from further embarrassment and potential fallout. On the other hand, letting Daniel off the hook entirely felt like condoning behavior she couldn't ignore. "Fine," she said eventually, her voice low but firm. "But understand this. I'll remember this moment, and I expect better from you and from everyone else wearing that badge." Her words sent a chill down Daniel's spine. Though she agreed to de-escalate, her warning was clear. This wasn't over. Not for him, and certainly not for the institution he represented. As the tension began to ease, Daniel stepped back, allowing Elena to return to her car. But as she slid behind the wheel and started the engine, he couldn't shake the feeling that tonight's events would haunt him far beyond this street corner, and deep down, he wondered if they should. As Mayor Elena Thompson pulled away from the curb, the crowd began to disperse slowly, their murmurs fading into the night. The streetlights cast long shadows over Maple Street, illuminating the remnants of an encounter that had left both Officer Daniel Hayes and Elena deeply unsettled. Though the immediate confrontation had ended, its ripple effects were only beginning to unfold. Daniel stood by his patrol car, staring at the empty space where Elena's sedan had been moments earlier. His mind raced with conflicting thoughts, relief that the situation hadn't escalated further, guilt over how he'd handled it, and unease about what might come next. He knew this wasn't the kind of incident that disappeared quietly. In a city as connected as Crestwood, news traveled fast, especially when cameras were involved. Back at City Hall, Elena paced her office, replaying the events in her head. Her assistant, Lauren, hovered nearby, concern etched across her face. "Are you okay, Mayor?" Lauren asked softly. "Do you want me to issue a statement, or call the chief of police?" Elena stopped pacing and sighed, running a hand through her hair. "I don't know yet," she admitted. "This isn't just about me, it's bigger than that. People are watching. They're always watching." Lauren nodded, understanding the weight of her words. As the city's first black female mayor, Elena carried not only the responsibilities of leadership, but also the expectations of representation. Every action, or inaction, was scrutinized, analyzed, and often politicized. "What do you think will happen now?" Lauren ventured cautiously. "I'm not sure," Elena replied, her voice tinged with frustration. "But I can't let this slide. Not entirely. If I do, it sends the wrong message. That misuse of authority is acceptable as long as it doesn't escalate." Meanwhile, Daniel returned to the precinct, his shoulders heavy with dread. The moment he stepped inside, whispers followed him. Some officers avoided eye contact while others gave him sympathetic nods. Word had spread quickly, thanks in part to social media posts and live streams capturing portions of the altercation. Sergeant Miller, Daniel's superior, called him into his office almost immediately. The older man leaned back in his chair, studying Daniel with a mix of concern and exasperation. "Care to explain what happened out there tonight?" he asked, gesturing toward the reports already flooding his desk. Daniel recounted the details, as objectively as possible, though he struggled to keep his voice steady. "It started as a routine stop for illegal parking," he explained. "But then, things got complicated." "Complicated doesn't begin to cover it," Sergeant Miller interrupted, holding up a printout of one of the live stream videos. "You've got half the city talking about this already, and trust me, it's not in your favor." Daniel clenched his fists under the table, fighting the urge to defend himself. "Sir, I was following protocol. I didn't know she was the mayor until after I ran her plates. By then, the crowd was forming and the situation felt volatile." Sergeant Miller sighed, rubbing his temples. "Protocol or not, you need to recognize context, Hayes. You can't treat everyone like a suspect, even if that's what training tells you to do, especially not someone like Mayor Thompson." The reprimand stung, but Daniel couldn't argue. Deep down, he knew Miller was right. Protocol was important, but so was judgment, and tonight his judgment had failed him. Later that evening, as Daniel sat alone in his apartment, he scrolled through social media, unable to ignore the growing backlash. Hashtags like "or justice for Mayor Thompson" and "or accountability" now trended locally, accompanied by angry comments and calls for disciplinary action against him. At the same time, Elena reviewed the same posts, her emotions swirling between anger and resolve. She understood the power of public sentiment, but she also knew knee-jerk reactions rarely led to meaningful change. "This isn't just about me," she muttered to herself, staring at her reflection in the window. "It's about every person who's ever been treated unfairly because of who they are, or who they're perceived to be." In their separate corners of the city, both Daniel and Elena prepared for what lay ahead. For Daniel, it meant facing scrutiny from his department and possibly the public. For Elena, it meant deciding whether to demand accountability or forgiveness. Neither realized yet how intertwined their paths would become in the days to follow. The next morning, Crestwood city buzzed with conversations about the incident. News outlets picked up the story, amplifying its reach far beyond social media. Headlines like "Mayor Thompson detained in controversial traffic stop" dominated local broadcasts, sparking debates at kitchen tables, office water coolers, and community forums. For Mayor Elena Thompson, the day began early. She arrived at City Hall before sunrise, her mind already racing with plans. Lauren had prepared a draft statement addressing the incident, but Elena hesitated to release it immediately. "We need to be strategic," she told her assistant. This isn't just about me, it's an opportunity to push for systemic change. Lauren nodded, jotting down notes. What kind of message do you want to send? Elena paused, choosing her words carefully. I want to acknowledge what happened without escalating tensions further. But I also want to make it clear that this isn't acceptable. Not from anyone, regardless of their intentions. While Elena worked on crafting her response, Officer Daniel Hayes faced a different kind of challenge. At the precinct, whispers followed him wherever he went. Some colleagues offered quiet support, while others avoided him altogether. The weight of public scrutiny bore down on him, making every task feel heavier than usual. Later that day, Chief of Police Marcus Reynolds called a press conference to address the growing controversy. Standing behind a podium emblazoned with the department's logo, he spoke in measured tones. What occurred last night was regrettable and does not reflect the values of our department, he stated firmly. We are committed to transparency and accountability as we review the matter thoroughly. Daniel watched the broadcast from his desk, feeling a mix of relief and frustration. While the chief's words provided some distance between him and the backlash, they also highlighted the gravity of the situation. He knew the investigation wouldn't absolve him entirely, not when so many people had witnessed the altercation firsthand. Meanwhile, Elena decided to take matters into her own hands. That afternoon, she held an impromptu town hall meeting at a community center in one of the city's underserved neighborhoods. Dozens of residents gathered, eager to hear directly from their mayor. I'm here because I believe in justice, Elena began, her voice steady but impassioned. What happened to me last night wasn't unique. It happens to people across this city every single day, people who don't have the privilege or platform that I do. Her words resonated deeply with the audience, drawing murmurs of agreement and applause. One woman stood up, tears in her eyes. Thank you for speaking out, Mayor Thompson. My son has been stopped too many times for no reason. Will anything ever change? Elena met the woman's gaze, her heart aching with empathy. Change won't come overnight, she admitted, but it starts with holding ourselves and those in power accountable. Together we can demand better. Back at the precinct, Daniel overheard snippets of Elena's speech during a break. Her passion and conviction struck a chord within him, forcing him to confront uncomfortable truths about his role in perpetuating systemic issues. Was he part of the problem? Could he become part of the solution instead? That evening, unable to shake these questions, Daniel reached out to Sergeant Miller. Sir, I've been thinking, maybe I should attend the community policing workshops again, or volunteer for outreach programs, something to rebuild trust. Miller raised an eyebrow, surprised by Daniel's initiative. It's a start, he said cautiously. But actions speak louder than words, Hayes. If you're serious about making amends, you'll have to prove it, as the sun set over Crestwood City. Both Daniel and Elena found themselves reflecting on the same thought. The road ahead would be difficult but necessary. For Elena, it meant leading with courage and conviction. For Daniel, it meant confronting his biases and striving to be better. Not just for himself, but for the community he served. Neither realized that their paths were about to cross once more, in ways neither could predict. A week after the incident, Crestwood City remained abuzz with discussions about accountability, justice, and reform. Mayor Elena Thompson had become a symbol of resilience, using her platform to advocate for meaningful change within law enforcement. Meanwhile, Officer Daniel Hayes worked tirelessly to rebuild trust, not just with the public, but also with himself. 1. Crisp morning, Elena received an unexpected invitation from Chief of Police Marcus Reynolds. He requested a private meeting at City Hall to discuss potential reforms, including increased transparency and community engagement initiatives. Though skeptical, Elena agreed, recognizing the importance of collaboration in driving systemic change. When the day arrived, Daniel accompanied Chief Reynolds to the meeting, a decision that surprised even him. As they entered the conference room, Elena's sharp gaze flickered briefly toward Daniel before returning to the chief. Her expression remained neutral, unreadable. Thank you for coming, Elena began, her tone professional yet cautious. I hope this conversation leads to tangible progress. Chief Reynolds nodded earnestly. That's our goal, Mayor Thompson. We're committed to addressing concerns and rebuilding trust within the community. As the discussion unfolded, Daniel listened intently, taking notes and observing how Elena navigated the conversation. She was poised, articulate, and unyielding when it came to demanding accountability. Yet beneath her composure, he sensed a deep determination to see real change, not empty promises. At one point, Chief Reynolds turned to Daniel. Officer Hayes has expressed interest in participating more actively in community outreach programs. His perspective could be valuable as we move forward. Elena's eyes shifted to Daniel, studying him closely. For a moment, neither spoke. The weight of their shared history hung silently in the air. Finally, she broke the silence. Officer Hayes, your willingness to engage is commendable. But actions matter more than words. If you truly want to make a difference, you'll need to demonstrate consistency, not just today, but every day moving forward. Daniel met her gaze, his voice steady despite the nerves coursing through him. I understand, Mayor Thompson. I know I made mistakes, and I'm working to learn from them. I want to do better, for myself, for the department, and most importantly, for the people of this city. Elena regarded him thoughtfully, searching for sincerity in his words. After a pause, she nodded slightly. Then prove it. Show us that you mean what you say. The rest of the meeting focused on concrete steps the department could take, from implementing bias training to hosting regular town halls where residents could voice concerns directly to officers. By the end, Elena felt cautiously optimistic, a rare sentiment given recent events. After the meeting concluded, Daniel lingered near the door, hesitant but determined. Mayor Thompson, he said quietly, may I speak with you for a moment? Elena paused, then gestured for him to continue. I want Ed to apologize to you personally, Daniel began, his voice tinged with vulnerability. What happened that night? It shouldn't have gone the way it did. I let protocol overshadow judgment, and I failed to recognize the bigger picture. I'm sorry for putting you in that position. Elena studied him, her expression softening ever so slightly. Apologies are important, Officer Hayes, but they're only the first step. Real change requires effort, consistent, deliberate effort. Don't let this moment pass without learning from it. I won't, Daniel promised, his voice firm. As they parted ways, both carried a renewed sense of purpose. For Elena, it was the knowledge that even small victories could pave the way for larger transformations. For Daniel, it was the understanding that redemption wasn't granted. It had to be earned. In the weeks that followed, Daniel threw himself into community outreach efforts, attending workshops, mentoring new recruits, and engaging with residents who once viewed him with suspicion. Slowly but surely, he began earning back fragments of trust. And though their paths rarely crossed again, Elena occasionally heard updates about Daniel's progress. Each report reminded her of the power of accountability and the possibility of growth even in the face of adversity. Crestwood City still had a long journey ahead, but moments like these proved that change, however incremental, was possible. And sometimes all it took was one person willing to confront their flaws, and another willing to believe in their capacity to improve.